There sits a little cottage that overlooks Thomas's branch. The cottage is home to two elderly people, Mr. and Mrs. Kyndley, who have been dear friends of the railway for many years. Whenever an engine goes past the cottage, you can always count on seeing them wave cheerfully at them, brightening their engine's day. One summer morning, Toby the tram engine and his faithful coach Henrietta were travelling up the line to Elsbridge. As they neared the tunnel, they spotted Mr. Kyndley standing by the track with a picnic basket. He waved as they approached, and Toby gave a friendly peep-peep and came to a stop. "Good morning, Mr. Kyndley. Where are you off to?" asked Toby. "We're heading to the coast," Mr. Kyndley replied. "My wife and I have packed fruit sandwiches and fruitcakes. Do you think you could take us there?" "Of course I can," said Toby. "Hop on in and we'll be off." With that, two elderly people climbed aboard Henrietta and Toby set off towards the coast. Upon arrival, Toby brought them to their destination. "Thank you, Toby," Mrs. Kyndley said with her eyes shining with gratitude. "We're so glad you could bring us here today." Mr. and Mrs. Kyndley walked off to enjoy their day, laughing and chatting like birds. But as Toby watched them, a little frown tugged at his heart. It felt bittersweet knowing that life was moving forwards for them, while he remained steadfast in his work. The next morning, however, things took a sudden heartbreaking turn. Mrs. Kyndley found her husband lying at the bottom of the stairs. Panicked, she immediately called an ambulance and Mr. Kyndley was rushed to the hospital. The engines watched anxiously as the ambulance sped past, their hearts heavy, expecting papers. 2 days later, the Fat Controller arrived at the sheds with somber news. "It is with great sadness that I must announce the passing of Mr. Kyndley," he said. "He passed away last night at 11:40 p.m. after a long battle with leukemia." The engines were silenced. Stunned by the news, Toby, who had just seen him a day ago, felt a deep ache in his heart. After a long pause, Percy spoke softly. "Will he be buried or cremated, sir?" "He will be cremated," replied the Fat Controller. His final wish was for Mrs. Kyndley to scatter his ashes along the coast. He also asked that Toby take her there one last time. Toby's heart swelled with both sadness and honor. "I'll be honored, sir, to do that," he said quietly, determined to fulfill his friend's last wish. In respect for Mr. Kyndley, the Fat Controller arranged for Toby and Henrietta to be repainted so they would look their best for this special journey. When Toby arrived at the Kyndley's cottage, Mrs. Kyndley was waiting patiently on the concrete steps. With great care, Mrs. Kyndley climbed aboard Henrietta and Toby set off for the coast. When they arrived, Toby came to a gentle stop. His driver and fireman helped Mrs. Kyndley off Henrietta and led her to the shore. She stood there for a moment, glazing out over the water. Tears welled in her eyes as she thought of all the years they had spent together. "Goodbye, my love." She kissed the urn one last time before opening it, And as the wind picked up, the ashes swirled into the sky and scattering into the color of the sunset. As the ashes disappeared, Mrs. Kyndley took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her heavy grief begin to ease. She turned back to Toby, who was waiting patiently for her. With a sad but peaceful smile, she climbed aboard Henrietta once more, ready to let go of her sorrows and carry her love for Mr. Kyndley in her heart forever. Toby was proud to have helped her fulfill his dear friend's final wishes. Together they slowly made their way back, knowing that love, like a gentle breeze, would always remain.